Which Porsche was first? The answer isn't as obvious as it might seem. Was the first Porsche the electric Egger-Lohner C2 Phaeton, dubbed number 1 by Ferdinand Porsche himself? Or perhaps the hybrid Lohner Porsche Semper Vivus, decades ahead of its time? Some point to the Mixta, the first production car with technology developed by Porsche. Others say the true history of the brand begins with the Type 64, the first car to bear the Porsche name. Others consider the Porsche 356 number 001, the first car registered as the Porsche brand, to be the beginning. In this film, we trace the entire journey, from the electric experiments of the late 19th century to the birth of a sports car legend. The Egger-Lohner C2 Phaeton, nicknamed Porsche number 1 by its designer, was Ferdinand Porsche's first car and one of the earliest registered automobiles in Austria. It was built in 1898, when the 21-year-old engineer began working on electric vehicle projects in Vienna. By the end of June of that same year, the P1 had already hit the streets, paving the way for its creator's extraordinary career. Years later, the preserved example, though stripped of its original bodywork, became the centerpiece of the Prologue exhibition at the Porsche Museum, symbolically marking the beginning of the brand's history. Porsche's interest in electricity was evident from an early age. As early as 1893, he electrified his family home, making it the first private building in the city with electric lighting and a powered doorbell. This experience led to the design of the P1, equipped with an octagonal electric motor with an output of 3 to 5 horsepower. The drive system alone weighed around 130 kilograms, a very significant weight for the time. The energy stored in batteries allowed for speeds of up to 35 kilometers per hour. P1 could cover approximately 50 miles without stopping in leisurely city driving. The speed was regulated by a 12-speed switch, allowing for precise adjustment of engine power. In August of 1899, the car was presented at an exhibition in Berlin and then entered in a 40-kilometer electric vehicle race. The route included numerous hills and obstacles, and more than half the participants failed to reach the finish line. The Porsche won by 18 minutes, consuming the least energy of all the competitors. The success of the P1 became the starting point for further experimentation. Porsche then developed a vehicle with 2 electric motors placed directly in the front wheels, creating the first-ever in-wheel hub motor. Soon, it added 2 more motors to the rear wheels, creating one of the first electric 4-wheel drive cars. Despite its impressive innovation, this design was burdened by a battery pack weighing around 1,800 kilograms, limiting its ability to climb steep inclines and exposing the technological limitations of the era. At the Paris World's Fair in the early 20th century, an improved version of the Lohner Porsche vehicle was unveiled, featuring in-wheel hub motors and capable of reaching speeds of around 37 kilometers per hour. To address the limited range and poor hill climbing performance, a small internal combustion engine was added to power an electric generator. Thus, the concept of the first hybrid 4-wheel drive car was born. This idea was further developed into the Semper Vivus, followed by the production Lohner Porsche Mixta, which was launched as a mature hybrid. Porsche's development of electric vehicles was proceeding at an extraordinary pace. As early as 1902, it won the Exelbergrennen race with the Lohner Porsche Mixta. A few years later, experimental battery-powered racing cars capable of exceeding 120 kilometers per hour were being built to demonstrate the potential of batteries. The story of the P1, once again publicly unveiled at the Porsche Museum during its anniversary celebration, demonstrates that the brand's foundations from the very beginning were linked to electric drive, innovation, and a bold look into the future of motoring. Ferdinand Porsche's first designs were created in the 19th century, long before his name became associated with the legendary Beetle or Auto Union racing cars. Born in Austria-Hungary, the engineer attracted the attention of the engineering community at the age of 21, presenting his first electric vehicle designs in 1896. 2 years later, he was employed by Ludwig Lohner's Vienna workshop, which until then specialized in bodywork, but was just beginning experiments with electric vehicles. For the young designer, this was an ideal opportunity to develop bold ideas and test solutions that were ahead of their time. It was in this environment that ideas were born that would forever etch themselves into automotive history. One of Porsche's key ideas was the Radnaben motor, an electric motor mounted directly in the wheel hub. This solution completely eliminated the need for a gearbox, drive shaft, or chains, significantly simplifying vehicle design and reducing energy losses. Lohner's first automobile, equipped with two such motors in the front wheels, was presented at the Paris Automobile Exhibition in 1900 and generated enormous public interest. Its quiet operation, lack of vibration, and futuristic engineering made the vehicle a technological sensation. However, for Porsche, this was only the starting point for an even bolder project. In the autumn of 1900, the designer began work on an even more revolutionary vehicle, combining an electric drive with an internal combustion engine. The new concept involved using the gasoline engine solely to power a generator that powered the electric motors and charged the batteries. Porsche had previously tested this solution in a sports car used in the Semmering Bergrennen hill climb, where it performed surprisingly well. The road car based on this idea was named Semper Vivus, Latin for eternally alive, symbolizing the vehicle's uninterrupted driving ability thanks to onboard energy generation. The Lohner Porsche Semper Vivus was equipped with two De Dion and Buten combustion engines, each producing approximately 2.5 HP, which powered generators. The energy was transferred to a battery bank, which then powered electric motors with a total output of nearly 5.5 AMP. The entire structure weighed approximately 1,700 kilograms, a significant burden for the turn of the century. The car reached speeds of up to 35 km/h and could travel up to 200 kilometers without stopping, making it one of the most technologically advanced vehicles of its time. It was one of the first hybrid cars in history, combining the advantages of two different power sources. Despite its impressive technical solutions, the Semper Vivus never entered series production. The vehicle's excessive weight placed excessive strain on the tires and suspension of the time, and the drivetrain itself required further refinement. The car, unveiled in Paris in 1900, was intended as a technology demonstrator, not a finished market product. However, its significance lay elsewhere. It proved that hybrid drive was possible and practical, and that electricity could play a key role in the development of the automotive industry. The ideas incorporated into the Semper Vivus later resurfaced in designs by Porsche and other designers. The story of the Semper Vivus had a remarkable epilogue over a century later. In November 2007, the Porsche Museum decided to build a faithful replica of the vehicle based on the original plans and documentation. The task was entrusted to Karosseriebau Drescher, previously involved in the reconstruction of the Porsche Type 64. The fully operational car was completed in 2010 and unveiled to the public as a symbol of the brand's innovative heritage. The Semper Vivus replica was used to promote the hybrid versions of the Cayenne and Panamera, demonstrating that Ferdinand Porsche's pre-1900 ideas remain relevant.
At the beginning of the 20th century, Ferdinand Porsche and Ludwig Lohner ushered in a new era of automotive engineering with the presentation of the Semper Vivus hybrid prototype in 1901. The vehicle was equipped with two De Dion and Buten internal combustion engines that charged batteries and powered electric motors located in the front wheel hubs. This solution caused a sensation at the Paris Motor Show, although the design was heavy, complex, and unsuitable for mass production. The Semper Vivus, despite its groundbreaking concept, proved too bulky and impractical. However, Porsche had a vision for further development of the hybrid drive and quickly began work on improving it. The prototype's biggest problems were excessive batteries and a lack of power. Therefore, Porsche limited battery capacity while simultaneously abandoning the two small combustion engines in favor of a single, significantly more powerful one. This resulted in a design that became the foundation of the mixed model. The new car, known as the Porsche Mixte, addressed the key issues of the Semper Vivus: lighter construction, smaller electric motors, and a single, more efficient combustion engine delivered improved performance. Crucially, electric hub motors were installed not only in the front wheels, but also in the rear, creating one of the first all-wheel drive vehicles in history. The Mixte combined technological audacity with efficiency, surpassing the earlier prototype. The introduction of electric four-wheel drive was a truly groundbreaking solution at the time, giving the Mixte exceptional traction and stability. Its design allowed for a smoother ride and eliminated the need for a traditional gearbox. It was a technological milestone, confirming that hybrids could be a viable alternative to traditional combustion engine cars. The Mixte became a symbol of engineering audacity, decades ahead of its time. The first Mixte models weighed around 1,200 kilograms and used four-cylinder engines from Austrian Daimler, displacing 5.5 liters and developing 25 horsepower. Only 7 of these vehicles were built, 5 of which were purchased by entrepreneur Emil Jelinek, who later became associated with the Mercedes brand. After the contract ended, Porsche used Panhard and Levasseur, which licensed hybrid production for several European markets, continuing to develop the concept. Although production of the Mixte was limited, the car gained recognition for its performance. In the spring of 1902, one of them won its class in the Exelberg race, demonstrating the potential of the hybrid drive. Reviews of the model were generally positive, with praise for its stability, smooth operation, and technological potential. However, despite its technical advantages, the design proved too expensive and complex to achieve widespread market acceptance. High production costs, difficult servicing, and lower reliability compared to conventional combustion engine cars limited the Mixte's commercial success. Only 11 units had been sold by 1905. Paradoxically, Lohner Porsche's purely electric cars gained greater popularity, with over 60 sold. They offered a simpler design, were easier to operate, and elicited fewer concerns from customers. In retrospect, the Porsche Mixte is considered one of the most important milestones in automotive history. Although it was not a commercial success, it laid the foundation for modern hybrids and electric vehicles. Its concepts, electric hub drive, recuperation, and the series hybrid system didn't reappear until a century later. The Mixte's legacy serves as a reminder that true innovation requires courage, and its value is only apparent from the perspective of succeeding generations.
The Porsche Type 64 is widely considered the first car to bear the genes of later Porsche designs, even though it was created before the brand officially existed. The project originated in the late 1930s as a response to the need for a lightweight, fast sports car capable of long-distance driving. The design was based on the technical solutions of the Volkswagen Beetle, which Ferdinand Porsche had been working on, but it was significantly enhanced in terms of performance and aerodynamics. Just 3 examples of the Type 64 were produced, and from the outset, it was a unique vehicle, experimental, hand-built, and driven by the idea of maximum efficiency. Even then, it set the course for the development of future Porsche models, combining low weight, a streamlined silhouette, and sporting ambitions. One of the most remarkable features of the Porsche Type 64 was its body. Handcrafted from aluminum, just 1.2 millimeters thick, it was an example of design thinking far ahead of its time. Streamlined shapes, covered wheel arches, and smooth body lines were designed to minimize air resistance. In an era when most cars had boxy silhouettes, the Type 64 had an almost futuristic look. This body later became a benchmark for post-war production Porsche models. It can still be seen today in the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart, a testament to the technical courage and vision of the engineers who worked on the foundations of the future brand before the war. Only 3 examples of the Porsche Type 64 were built, each with a slightly different history. The war complicated the fate of these cars, with some being destroyed or dispersed. One example served directly with the Porsche family, becoming a means of personal transportation and a testing ground for new technical solutions. It was to this car that, after the war, workers at the Porsche plant in Gmünd, Austria, introduced significant improvements. These improvements made the Type 64 an even more refined design, combining pre-war engineering with experience gained in the difficult post-war realities. The example used by the Porsche family underwent significant modifications after the war. The mechanical brakes were replaced with more modern, hydraulically controlled ones, improving driving efficiency and safety. The suspension was also modified, adapting it for better stability and handling at higher speeds. The increased engine power also allowed for the full exploitation of the body's aerodynamic potential. These improvements made the Type 64 not only a historical curiosity, but a fully functional sports car, capable of both competition and everyday use, a rarity among prototype designs at the time. After the war, a Porsche Type 64 came into the possession of Automotive, an Austrian racing driver and automotive enthusiast. Mate added the car to his collection, but he didn't treat it solely as a museum piece. For several years, he competed in it, achieving numerous successes and proving that Porsche's pre-war design was still competitive. His achievements helped cement the legend of the Type 64 as not only a pioneering car, but also a sporting success. Thanks to Mathey, the car gained a second life, and its history was enriched by real-world successes on the racetrack and track. The Porsche Type 64 wasn't a mass market or commercial project, but its significance for the brand's history is immense. It was the first to combine elements that would later become Porsche hallmarks: lightweight construction, a rear-mounted engine, attention to aerodynamics, and a sporty character. Although technically derived from Volkswagen, the philosophy behind the Type 64 was already fully Porsche. This car bridged the gap between Ferdinand Porsche's pre-war engineering and the post-war models that built the brand's global reputation. Without the Type 64, it's difficult to imagine the later successes of the 356 or 911. After Automate's death in 1995, his collection was sold. The priceless Porsche Type 64 was transferred to a new owner in Vienna, along with numerous parts and memorabilia related to the car's history. Shortly thereafter, the spare parts and other treasures were acquired by the founders of the Prototype Museum in Hamburg. To their great surprise, among the seemingly insignificant parts, original components from other Type 64s were found. This discovery was of immense historical significance, allowing for the recreation of fragments of history that for years seemed irretrievably lost. The recovered components allowed the Prototype Museum to begin work on the car's reconstruction, an exceptionally difficult undertaking requiring extensive knowledge. Every detail had to be faithful to the original, and documentation was sparse. However, thanks to this project, it was possible to bring back to life fragments of one of the most important cars in Porsche's history. Simultaneously, the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart is exhibiting the original aluminum body of the Type 64, highlighting its groundbreaking significance. These efforts demonstrate the importance the company places on preserving and promoting the earliest stages of the brand's history. Today, the Porsche Type 64 is considered one of the most valuable and desirable collector cars in the world. Its value stems not only from its extreme rarity, but above all, from its historical significance. It symbolizes the birth of the Porsche brand and provides material proof that its DNA was formed even before its official market debut. The Type 64 is the subject of research by automotive historians, an inspiration for designers, and a cult object among brand fans. Every preserved item, every photograph, and every account of its use constitute an invaluable source of knowledge about the origins of sports cars. The Porsche Type 64 is much more than a prototype or a museum curio. It is the cornerstone of the entire Porsche philosophy, engraved in its aluminum, rivets, and flowing body lines. Its history, from pre-war ambitions through wartime turmoil, post-war modifications, Automotive's successes, and subsequent museum discoveries, weaves a coherent narrative of determination, innovation, and passion. Today, the Type 64's legacy permeates every Porsche sports car that takes to the road or track. It is precisely why this unassuming pre-war car holds such a unique place in automotive history. The story of the 1948 Porsche 356 No. 1 begins not with the car itself, but with Ferdinand Porsche, one of the most distinguished engineers in automotive history. Born in 1875 in Austria-Hungary, he demonstrated extraordinary technical aptitude even as a young man, assisting his father in the workshop and studying at technical schools. By the time he reached the 19th century, he was already working on electric vehicles and developing solutions we would today call hybrids. His career gained momentum at Austro-Daimler and later at Daimler-Benz, where he was responsible for the most advanced technical projects. The experience gained over decades laid the foundation for the car that, in 1948, launched the Porsche brand as a sports car manufacturer. Following his successes at Austro-Daimler and Daimler-Benz, Porsche progressed through successive stages of his career, eventually founding his own design office, Dr. Ing. H. C. F. Porsche, GmbH, in 1931. His son, Ferry Porsche, worked alongside him and gradually assumed increasing responsibility. It was during this period that the design for the people's car, the Volkswagen Beetle, was conceived. While this design forever linked the Porsche name to the mass motorization of the Third Reich, it also provided a crucial technical foundation for future sports cars. The engine, suspension, and philosophy of the lightweight, rear-wheel drive car would soon find entirely new, significantly sportier applications. World War II brutally interrupted the development of civilian projects. After the war, Ferdinand Porsche was imprisoned in France on suspicion of collaborating with the German regime. At that time, the company, relocated to Gmünd, Austria, was headed by Ferry Porsche. It was then that a crucial decision was made. Since there was no sports car on the market that met his
Które Porsche było
expectations,
więc
he
pierwsze?
had to build one
Eger
himself.
Loner.
Ferry wasn't
C2.
thinking about
Phaeton
luxury or
był
large-scale
pierwszym
production.
samochodem zbudowanym
His
przez
goal was a
Ferdynanda
lightweight,
Porsche.
agile car that
Semper
would offer
Vivus,
pure
jednym z
driving
pierwszych
pleasure.
hybrydowych aut
Thus,
świata.
the idea for the
Mixte,
Porsche No. 1,
pierwszym krokiem
the
w
first
stronę
car to
seryjnej
bear the
produkcji
Porsche name,
technologii jego
was
autorstwa. Typ
The Roadster,
64.
known today as
Pierwszym
the
autem
Porsche
noszącym nazwisko
356
Porsche na
No. 1,
nadwoziu.
356
A
001,
356,
or
numer
Roadster Gmünd,
001,
was completed in May
pierwszym
of
samochodem
1948
oficjalnie
after less
zarejestrowanym
than a
jako
year of
Porsche.
development.
Każdy z
It
nich
was an
jest pierwszy
exceptionally
w
modest
inny
car,
sposób.
yet
Historia marki
meticulously
nie zaczyna
crafted
się w
in
jednym
every
punkcie.
detail.
To
The
proces,
body was designed
ewolucja
by
myśli
Irving
technicznej i
co-designer of the
konsekwentnego
Beetle
rozwoju
silhouette,
wizji
and the
jednego
hand-forming of
człowieka.
the aluminum
I być
panels
może
was
właśnie
performed
to
by
jest
Friedrich
najciekawsze.
Weber, using only
Porsche
simple
nie
tools
narodziło
and
się
wooden
w jednej
templates.
chwili.
The
Ono
distinctive
dojrzewało
frameless
przez
split
dekady,
windshield
od
gave
ciszy
the car a
silników
light and
elektrycznych
modern feel.
po rasowy
Although it
dźwięk
was considered
sportowych
merely
maszyn.
a Beetle
A
convertible
odpowiedź
to
na
the
pytanie,
sarcastic,
które
it
Porsche było
actually
pierwsze,
represented a completely
zależy
new
od
level of
tego, jak
quality in the
definiujemy
world of
słowo
post-war
pierwsze.
sports cars.
Początek tej
The
historii
Porsche
nie jest jedną datą,
356 No.
lecz
1
drogą
was based
pełną
largely
prób,
on Volkswagen
wizji i
components,
odwagi.
but these were
Prawdziwy początek
meticulously
Porsche
modified.
kryje się nie w
The
nazwie
chassis,
ani
suspension,
numerze, lecz w
gearbox
myśli
and drum
człowieka,
brakes were all
który
derived
patrzył
from the
dalej
Beetle,
niż
but
inni.
the key difference was the mid-engine layout. The four-cylinder air-cooled unit was positioned between the cabin and the rear axle, ensuring excellent balance. Interestingly, it was the only Porsche with a mid-engine in this form. All subsequent 356 models, as well as the 911, had the engine behind the rear axle. Additionally, the No. 1 featured a tubular frame, while subsequent cars featured a plate frame and steel bodies. The base Volkswagen engine, with a displacement of 1.13 litres, developed just 25 HP, but it was significantly modified at Porsche. The cylinder stroke was increased, the compression ratio was raised, the valve train was improved, and two carburetors were installed. This increased power to at least 35 HP, resulting in very good performance, despite a weight of just 585 kilograms. A four-speed manual gearbox transferred drive to the rear wheels, and the simple design promoted reliability. While these figures may seem modest today, in 1948 the Porsche number 1 was a fast and remarkably agile car. The interior of the Porsche 356 number 1 was extremely simple, focused on function rather than luxury. The driver and passenger occupied small, lightweight seats, with only a tachometer and glove compartment in front of them. The speedometer was added later. There were map pockets in the doors, luggage and a fuel tank under the front hood, and a spare tire and battery in the rear. Every detail had its purpose, and the lack of unnecessary frills emphasized the car's sporty character. This foreshadowed the Porsche philosophy that, for decades, placed the driver at the center of attention. In May 1948, Ferry Porsche set off on its first test run from Gmünd to Zell am See. The car reached speeds of around 135–140 km/h, 84–87 mph, and suffered only one breakdown, a broken rear suspension arm, which was quickly repaired. Just 2 months later, the Porsche 356 number 1 was delivered to motoring journalists. Their opinions were surprisingly unanimous. This is what a modern sports car should look like: light, agile, precise to handle, and immensely enjoyable to drive. This was the moment when the Porsche brand began to build its legend. The success of the number 1 Roadster led to the development of the 356-2 prototype coupe, and before the end of the 1940s, production of the 356 began in Gmünd, using Volkswagen parts available after the war. A contract with VW soon enabled the company to return to Stuttgart and establish production in Zuffenhausen. In January 1951, Ferdinand Porsche died, not having lived to see his brand fully succeed, but his vision was already being realized by his son. The 356 became the financial and image-building foundation for Porsche for decades to come. The Porsche 356 number 1 was registered for road use on June 8, 1948, a date considered the symbolic birth of Porsche sports cars. Over the years, the car underwent numerous modifications and repairs, losing its original form, but its significance remains undeniable. Today, it rests in the Porsche Museum as a priceless exhibit. In 2018, to celebrate the brand's 70th anniversary, a faithful replica of the first 356 was built. The Porsche number 1 is not just a car. It is the material beginning of a philosophy that led to the creation of icons like the 911 and made Porsche one of the world's most important sports brands. So, which Porsche was first? The Egerlohner So2 Phaeton was the first car built by Ferdinand Porsche. The Semper Vivus was one of the world's first hybrid cars. The Mixte was the first step towards series production of his technology. The Type 64 was the first car to bear the Porsche name on the body, and the 356 number 001 was the first car officially registered as a Porsche. Each of them is a first in a different way. The history of the brand doesn't begin at a single point. It's a process, an evolution of technical thought, and the consistent development of one man's vision. And perhaps this is the most interesting part: Porsche wasn't born in a single moment. It matured over decades, from the silence of electric engines to the pure sound of sports machines. And the answer to the question, which Porsche was first, depends on how we define the word first. The beginning of this story isn't a single date, but a journey full of trials, vision, and courage. The true beginning of Porsche lies not in a name or a number, but in the thought of a man who saw beyond others.